I just want to congratulate everybody for what they've decided to do here and take on. And I've had a little bit of experience of this in two forms, partly as the president of Civil Voice, being in places like Morton and seeing that people can seize the initiative and look at buildings, partly because I spend what seems like about 150 years of my life trying to help the Hackney Empire in London's East End. I'm aware, as I stand here talking, that you're taking on a major job here. This is a big place, this Zaman. We're talking about a change in the way in society that we live. Because over the years, making restoration, being involved in various projects, working with Civil Voice, I'm very aware that we, as a community, don't assemble together as much as we used to. That's one of the reasons why there are empty churches. It's one of the reasons why I'm constantly being asked, will I help out with this theatre that's no longer used. We have chapels, beautiful chapels across Britain that are no longer used. We have, increasingly in London, rather wonderful pubs, which were built as gin palaces. They were built as called gin palaces, and they were built to extremities of glamour and beauty, partly because the people of the East End lived in slums, and they lived in overcrowded accommodation, sometimes 13 to a room, and so the pub was the place where people went to escape from their homes. These days, we live in rather more lavish homes, and as a result, we spend more time entertaining ourselves on our own, watching television or listening to music. And in a sense, we leave a residue of buildings across Britain which are complicated but also rather beautiful. But the story of Hackney, one that I was involved in, was a story of a group of people similar to the group to Bradford One, who felt that it was impossible to see this wonderful Frank Matcham theatre, a thing which had been constructed in under 18 months, using some of the latest technology. It was the first building to have a pre-stressed concrete used in it in London. And to go forward and to realise that they could save that building if they got into that building and started using it for its original purpose, which was to entertain people. And so we can only welcome this. We have to say Bradford One are taking on what may seem like an enormous task. But the story across Britain is that such tasks can be successful. They can work. They do happen. And they happen, funnily enough, not because of centralised or often sort of major groups of elected individuals doing things about it, because they have a lot on their plate, but because teams, gangs, people who really care, individuals, set out and say, we're going to be involved in this. Now, we actually, at the moment, face a period in our urban environment and our urban fabric of great crisis. I don't think we have over the last 10 years, but this recession and this period of economic emergence has resulted in this government rushing to the legal processes, rushing to make law. First of all, they've torn up the old planning regulations and promised they're going to deliver to us a 52-page planning regulation, and that's in a framework at the moment. In other words, it's waiting for the detail to be written. We're watching with some interest to see what that detail will be, because God or the devil will be in those details, and we don't know at the moment what entirely those planning regulations are going to mean. Alongside that, they've introduced a broadly and slightly confusing band of options called localism and neighbourhood planning. Those are encouraging people who live in their communities to get involved in what they want their own urban environment to look like and how they are going to develop their towns, their cities, and specifically their parishes over the next 20 years. The government has put it quite plainly, Local forums have to be put together, and they have to formulate local plans in a consultation with the local authorities. If they do not, the government will feel free to impose anything it likes on the area. But this is almost as straightforward as that. What's slightly also disturbing about it is that although there's been a great deal of fuss from the CPRE and National Trust, quite rightly, about intentions to build on a green belt, there hasn't been enough fuss, to my mind, about some of the clear intentions to change the nature of planning in urban environment. Because the community that is constantly raised up as being the most important community that needs to be consulted, given help, and cannot be turned down if they have ideas, are the business community. Now, I like business. I'm a businessman myself. I have involved myself, and will be in the future, in developing and taking over buildings and turning them into flats and finding new uses for them. But the notion that there is only one voice that counts in the central cities is a rather extraordinary one. Because if you look through the framework, the one thing that's missing from it, well, there are quite a few things that are missing, but one glaring omission is the idea that the centre of any city has any spiritual or cultural value at all. It's seen as a retail and commercial opportunity almost entirely. Now that sits at odds with many, many places I visit across Britain. It sits at odds, for example, with Malton. You don't go to Malton and think, oh yeah, what we should be doing here is really putting more shopping centres into Malton and trying to make sure that Malton is a little bit more up to date with a good bypass coming in over the top there and more access for cars and making sure that there's a good That's not the centre of Malton. It's not really the purpose of the centre of Malton. And to ignore the fact that one of the virtues of our city centres is that they exist as front rooms. They are part of what constitutes the pride of place. And a great writer on architecture and urban planning called Griff Rhys wrote that the actual reason why people support their towns, have a loyalty to place, is not exactly a rational thing. It's partly to do with the beating heart, the association that you have with either the place you were born, the place you were raised, the place you live, and consequently, when we walk into central areas and we find that they are in a state of decay, this disturbs us. It takes us it makes us think that nobody really cares. And so the idea of caring, the idea of citizens caring, being involved in, taking the advantages that are now apparently being offered to them by the government, is very, very